We would like to welcome Peter Beyer. He's a member of the German Bundestag, visiting Washington, D.C., a member of the CDU, of the Christian Democrats, the party of Chancellor Angela Merkel. He's in Washington to hold talks about TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. He's meeting with US representatives. He's also meeting with us. And Peter Beyer, welcome to AICGS, first of all.
Thank you.
We would like to ask you, before we take a look at the sort of big transatlantic picture, what's going on in Germany? You know, we are about 4.5 months away from a very important election, September 22nd. Chancellor Angela Merkel is running for re-election. Your party is ahead in the polls, but now there is a new player. There's a new player, and a player that that has decided that Germany or that the euro should as an experience, should be ended. Mm-hmm. How does that change the dynamic, the political dynamic within your country?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much that we can have this discussion. I'm glad to be here. You're talking about a time in Germany where it is very interesting to be, because we have this election year, and I will not say this changes everything, but you can feel that something is happening. If you look to the different landscape with regard to political parties, and you're absolutely right, we have not only this anti-Euro party, which calls itself Alternative for Germany, and the others are the sort of pirate movement party, which will probably not be elected into the German Bundestag. But you never know with regard to the Alternative for Germany. So we have a changed political landscape, and you can feel this. This has some effect both on public opinion and on parliamentary life in Berlin. We don't know yet what political role, after the general elections on September 22nd, the AfD will play. But if you look to the current polls just from yesterday, you see that they can make it into the Bundestag, and they try to grab the sentiment that people feel over the media, you know, an overall anti-Euro and anti-European
a disenchantment with the projects.
Yes, disenchantment with the project, and they try to make profit out of it. But having said that, just to be against Europe and the euro, to me is nothing that will that is not enough. And I think in the end, when people go to the ballots and they are asked to elect the parties, they will see that this is not really an alternative. But again, they play a role now. They are sitting in the discussion rounds on TV. And I had the pleasure, or not pleasure, if you can put it as you like, to meet 2 weeks ago in my Berlin office with one of the founders of this party, a lady. And this was a lesson. I learned a lot from this, about a 1-hour discussion. And it was not a very pleasant discussion because, you know, it was confirmed that they are just against the euro. And you know, a country like Germany, you need to offer to the people more than one point in your party program.
Platform, yes. Yeah. How do you think the presence of this new actor in Germany can change, modify the crisis management in the coming months? Of course, you know, we don't know what the outcome will be in September, but Chancellor Merkel has to take this new reality into account. Obviously, the Eurozone is not out of the woods. There could be new flare-ups in the coming months. Slovenia is one example, but the worsening situation in some of the member countries in terms of unemployment can put sort of pressure on Germany as well to sort of reverse some of the austerity-driven policies. How do you think will that affect, will the presence of the AfD, of this new party, affect the way Germany behaves at a European level?
Clear answer, I don't see that they have so much influence on government work, on Chancellor Merkel's work. She's doing an excellent job in Europe in the crisis management. They do not have so much influence that they would change in the upcoming months the behavior of the government. I don't see this at all. It is more, again, this feeling, this overall public opinion, which of course even Chancellor Merkel cannot disregard completely, and she does not. But to this end, it does not need a new political actor like the AfD. You have to observe them and take them to a certain extent serious, but they are not so strong that they will influence in the upcoming month the government action.
Now, for our American audience, a lot of people here who observe the Euro crisis think, some of them hope, that there might be a change in course after September 22nd, especially when it comes to bolder measures to help the Eurozone overcome the current debt crisis. That clearly depends on who wins or what kind of government emerges out of the election. But do you see a fundamental change happening or a correction happening after September 22nd? Or do you see continuity no matter who will form the government?
2 points that we need to observe here. First thing is it depends on how the Bundestag will be composed. So who will be in charge? Who will be the coalition? Second point is you have to take into account always in these things. We have 27 in a couple of months, 28 member states. So Germany, with Chancellor Merkel or Wolfgang Schäuble, are not sitting alone at a table discussing with the Commission. There are 27 or 26 other heads of states or ministries. So it's I just want to put your attention to the point that Germany is a strong and influential voice in Europe, of course, cannot disregard this, but it is one voice after all. So this is one thing. And coming back to my first point, it really strongly depends, to my opinion, on how the election, how the outcome will be. Every so-called great coalition, so the Social Democrats and the Conservatives Party, the CDU, has its time. It might be the feeling of the people that they say that they vote for a big coalition, because this will be the case if they feel tough decisions need to be made, and we do not have the time for weeks and months of discussions in the Parliament, in other organizations, that we need a big majority in the federal parliament in Germany, and with this big majority, a government can act more easily and more and faster. So it strongly depends on the outcome.
What's your preference?
I see. But even with having said that, for me, if I could wish something, I would see continuity. Continuity, because I'm not a friend of radical cuts and radical decisions, because it's not trust building, and we need trust in the system, in the decisions, and in the decision makers.
But we have reached a point in the Euro crisis where it's not just managing the crisis. We have reached a tipping point where it's actually making some fundamental decisions, whether it's the banking union, or whether it's a fiscal union or a political union even. We have reached that limit where decisions need to be made that entail ceding sovereignty to Europe. Yeah. It seems to be necessary in order to overcome the crisis in a more fundamental way. So we have reached a different phase, or
Absolutely.
We are very close to a different phase.
I agree, and if I'm speaking of, I'm not a friend of radical decisions. I exclude from radical decisions, but this is my personal view, a decision to give more sovereignty to Brussels, because I think if we really believe in the European Union project, and I strongly believe in it, and I think it's the right way, This needs to be done. This is the only way if we want more integration with regard to a fiscal union, with regard to economical union, with regard to more political union. This is a logical further step. Otherwise, it will not work, and the European Union project will decrease in power and efficiency, and we need a reform of these of the institutions.
Do you think that German citizens are ready for that? Do they realize that we have reached this point, where the fundamental choice has to be made?
Partially, it's a responsibility for politicians. Of the politicians to go, for me as a member of parliament, I see it as my responsibility to go to my constituents in my constituency and explain to them first what is happening, what I think should be the further steps, and try to exchange arguments. Of course, there's a lot of criticism or skepticism because the people do not know what will be the effect on themselves. Is my money worth as much as it is today, or will we lose something? But if you talk, which I do a lot in my constituency with the people who have these questions, then they see the benefit in the European Union project with regard to economic aspects, but also with regard to these so-called old story peace keeping in Europe. I'm from time to time in one of the states of ex-Yugoslavia, so Serbia, Kosovo, and Montenegro. This is just around the corner from Germany, so to speak. And we have KFOR there, 5,000 soldiers under German command. And if we see this, that it is a good thing to involve them in the European enlargement and accession projects, these countries, it is better than to leave them alone, because if we will do this, we will have probably a civil war there again with the consequences that we had in the mid-90s. So the original idea to build up a European, an integrated Europe, apart from economic issues, peace building and peacekeeping is topical as it was back then. Mm-hmm. So they overall believe in the European Union project, and very, very rarely is somebody at the end of the discussion is not convinced. And so I think Germans are prepared for this. Mm-hmm. The majority, of course, the supporters of the AfD are anti-Euro, anti-European, and most of them take the opposite position. But they are not the majority. Mm-hmm. That's good. That's a good thing.
The way you described the European trajectory, how does the transatlantic relationship fit into mm-hmm. that, and specifically the upcoming negotiations on transatlantic trade and partnership mm-hmm. and investment partnership?
The partnership and friendship between Germany and the USA, and between Europe and the USA, is a long-standing one. It is a very, very strong one. I do not have to tell you the history, the bonds between Germany and the United States after the Second World War and everything. The Americans helped us a lot. Germany would not be there, definitely mm-hmm. not be there where we are today without the Americans. And we mustn't forget this. The Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership has come a long way. If you go back to the early 90s, when this was already an idea, and then to 2007 with the Transatlantic Economic Council, where it was more about standards, and which is still very active, was founded under Chancellor Merkel when Germany had the EU presidency, Council presidency. And now I think the time is right for this mega project. It comes at a time where Europe is in a crisis, where the United States is not so strong in the economy. They have their problems, and it's not a going together of weak partners, but based on the common shared values that we have, both rule of law, freedom of speech, the individual, and many other, democracy and many other things, and already a very highly integrated transatlantic economic partnership that we already have. it is the right time to see that we need to we can do even better. Tariff barriers, do away with non-tariff barriers, and this is as I put it, a mega project. Comes at a time where also we have to look to other rising countries and economies in Asia, the BRICS states, of course, China in the first place, and for the Western industrialized countries, it is very important to see that if we do not integrate ourselves more together, we will lose our leadership with regard to technology and innovation, and then other countries will set us the standards. And now we still have the chance to do this, to dictate this. But having said this, I don't see the TTIP as a block that excludes others. On the contrary, if you go back to the Uruguay round, I think it was in the 90s.
In the 90s,
in
yes.
the 90s. It was more or less dead, and then NAFTA came, and this work, NAFTA was negotiated and implemented, and just after this, the Uruguay round, gained more new momentum, and
so TTIP could spur or revitalize a presently dead Doha round.
I'm convinced.
And
yes,
and attracts outside partners to reignite the conversation with the US and with Europe about.
Absolutely, nobody should fear a monolith block, that reaches from the Black Sea to California. This is the geographical volume that we're talking about. Nobody should fear this, and nobody has to fear this. Which could serve as a blueprint for a modern free trade and investment agreement. And I think it could really spur the Doha round, which is basically dead as we speak.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that this project has become so relevant, also because of the weaknesses that you were talking about, and specifically the weaknesses in Europe, very low growth, very high unemployment, the fact that TTIP could basically be a different kind of stimulus package, since the fiscal maneuvering room is exhausted. Basically, trade could replace that in order to help the local economies to regain some traction.
This is one element, obviously, and it's a legitimate one. But the TTIP is not just born out of a weakness because there is a crisis. This would not be a good starting point at all. But it has facilitated the idea that the window of opportunity is now. It was not 5 years ago, it was not 10 years ago, it is now. And again, the crisis situation is one, the rising of other economies in Asia and elsewhere. Coming back to the crisis, I think apart from different than Eurobonds, for example, which is just something for a very short-term effect that they might have. Politicians and the industries have seen that an agreement of the size, of the sheer volume that is behind this, can serve as a tool, as a means for a prevention in the mid and in the long run. And everybody is expecting growth, economic growth, and job creation from this agreement. There are a lot of studies out there. Some predict a growth from 1.5%. Others say just 0.4, 0.5%. For me, the economic aspect is one very important one. But the other dimension that we have to see there and have to take into account is the political added value that comes with it, which might be at least as important than the sheer figures from the economic side. Mm-hmm.
Does TTIP also has the potential to sort of push aside some European fears about the famous Asian pivot that the US is
I don't like
undertaking.
the pivot to Asia expression at all, because well, it is there obviously, but it has been there before. You know, the German angst of the pivot to Asia, and Obama, the Pacific president, and everything. If you're honest, you go back to, I think it was President Thomas Jefferson who sent Lewis and Clark, go west and explore the West, and so to speak, to the Pacific. So it started all back then. And if you see how often German politicians, including Chancellor Merkel, have visited China and other Asian countries, we have our pivot to Asia as well. So I think this has been, this is a discussion that nobody has to fear. Yeah, this is my position with regard to the pivot to Asia. And the other aspect that you mentioned was, help me?
Well, it was the pivots to Asia. Yes, it was the pivot to Asia. Mr. Beyer, if you tried, if you had the magic wand and and you had 3 wishes for the next 12, 18 months, what would you want to achieve as a politician in Germany, but also clearly as a player in Europe and in the transatlantic community?
Very selfishly and obviously, I would like to see me and my party win the general elections in September, because it would be good for Germany, it would be good for Europe, and would be good for the TTIP, because the government from Chancellor Merkel is absolutely behind it. Second thing would be starting of the negotiations of the TTIP, and really getting it done quite rapidly, and not excluding so many things right from the beginning, but pursuing a comprehensive approach, and thinking about a third wish, staying healthy.
And now the flip side. What is your biggest fear? What keeps you worried or awake at night, if anything?
Apart from the jet lag that I just feel because I arrived yesterday. The flip side is I'm not fearing this, but I strongly believe that we should do everything that we are not starting in Europe to exclude Euro countries from the Eurozone, or even European Union member states from being part of the EU.
Such as the UK?
For example, the UK. This is something, sometimes people say, well, the UK, if they are here or not, it doesn't really matter. I think it would be a catastrophic, disastrous effect on the European Union. This is something that I would really fear. We should do and work to the for the common end that we all should have, that the European Union will be strengthened in the upcoming months and years, and this needs brave politicians, brave decision makers to bring things forward, even sometimes against public opinion.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.